sponsors again. Let's give them a round of applause. And now, I'd like to bring to the podium to introduce our guest speaker, the fine president of this organization, a ferocious leader, Dr. Amos Brown, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much, Mr. Toastmaster. One great preacher said, some people just must say something, while others have something to say. Our speaker needs no lengthy introduction. I want you to hear what he has to say. And he comes very much equipped, imbued with breadth, background, and experience to speak to the present crisis that is upon us in this nation and in the world when it comes to violations of human and civil rights. You have already in your souvenir program his very robust vita. But now, I will do what C.A.W. Clark said we should always do for a great man. The best way to introduce a great man is to let the people hear him. I present to you now the one and only Roland Martin, who will be our speaker for this fateful evening. Let's give it up for our great speaker who's come to be with us and to bless this occasion.
So how are we doing? All right, glad to see all of you. Glad that you're here. Some of y'all, I saw some of y'all faces. She's asked the sponsor to speak. Y'all were like, oh, how many sponsors we got? I saw y'all looks on there. I saw you, so I was checking y'all out. See, I see everything. Being a journalist, you got to pay attention to what folk are doing. So I saw the looks on y'all's face. I even turned to the past. I said, how many sponsors we got? But it's good to be, y'all got to lighten up now. Life ain't that serious. So glad to be here. Amos chased me down like a bill collector trying to get me here. Blew my cell phone up, and I was like, what do he want? So he called and called and called, and so I said, okay. I said, I'll be glad to come. And it was interesting because when I was at Congressional Black Caucus, I met London and Melina. Like, when you come to San Francisco, I'm like, I don't know. I said, it ain't like that's on the regular rotation for a brother. Then all of a sudden, Amos called, so I said, I'm glad to be here. And then, of course, and this is like Negro weekend, because y'all got this event, 100 black men down the hotel, the boule around the corner. I'm going to be doing drive-bys all night. Last night, folk took me to Oakland. They said, I went to a party. They said, we're going to a party. We went to 4 places. I was like, man, what is going on here? Y'all dragging me all around. And then, of course, when you come to town, black people, they get mad if you don't call. So I called Willie Brown. He ain't called me back. Called Danny Glover. He's shooting a movie in Atlanta. He called me back. Called Frankie Beverly. But he called me back, too. So tell Mayor Willie Brown the other important black people call me back. So tell him I'm highly disappointed in him as a fellow man of Alpha Phi Alpha. He might want to call me back.
All right.
Well, I'm going to talk about him on TV Monday morning. And so, yes, I will do it, too. Yes, I will talk about you on television. You could ask that pastor who met with Trump.
What's your
In fact, the two brothers who organized it, they've been avoiding me like the plague or something. Like I got something. So, but I still want to have a conversation with them. And the reason being is because, it is not my design to make people look stupid on TV. If they just look stupid, that's all on them. I'm just there to ask the question. But it's real interesting too, and I'm gonna get to eventually what I'm gonna talk about. But I gotta say this because when I was down the hall, I was saying hello to the folks at 100 Black Men. And a brother asked me, he said, "Man, why haven't we seen you on CNN?" And a lot of people asked me that. And my contract was up in 2013, and new CEO chose not to renew, and that's fine. But I explained to this brother. I said, well, first of all, I said I got my own show on TV One. And I said, now what I need you to understand is, when I say I have my own show, what that means is when I was on CNN for 6 years, I was on somebody else's show.
All right.
Where they pick the topics, they pick the guests. I said, this is my show, where I pick the topics and I pick the guests. I said, so I would much prefer to be in control of my own destiny as opposed to playing somebody else's game. We saw that with the Daniel Holtzclaw trial, where you swear with mainstream media, they didn't know that a former white cop was on trial for raping 13 black women because none of them covered the trial. We were the only national television show that consistently covered that trial. And if it wasn't for our show, you would have not even known that this trial was going on. And so that's a perfect example of what happens when, first and foremost, you have black networks, and then you have a black news show where we were able to cover our own. Because, the first black newspaper was Freedom's Journal. In their lead editorial in 1827, they wrote, "We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us." And that's really where we stand today when we talk about what's going on with media, because I'm just not interested in asking somebody else to please, pretty please, cover us and talk about us. Look, black folks been paying me for a long time. Tom Joyner, owned by black people. Radio 1, owned by black people. TV 1, owned by black people. So, I ain't got a problem calling you out because I'm worried because my house note paid, my car notes are paid, I don't have any credit card debt. So what you think you're going to do to me? Now, see, I know some of y'all in this room got real uncomfortable when I said that because some of y'all got so much debt you can't say nothing at your job. Now, I'm saying that for a reason because debt to many of us are like invisible shackles. It prevents us from speaking truth to power. And so here we are trying to confront what's happening, and we're kind of like, I can't say nothing because, I got that mortgage, and I'm driving that expensive car, so let me just go ahead and be quiet. And that's a fundamental problem because if you really understand our history, we've always had people who had the freedom to say what was necessary in order to lead us down the path of freedom. And that leads me to what I want to deal with, and that is the true cost of freedom. The true cost of freedom. Now, I want you to ask yourself a question, then I want you to turn to your neighbor right now, left or the right, and I want you to look them in the eye. That's not rhetorical, that's literal. Turn to the left or the right and look your neighbor in the eye, and I want you to ask them this question: why are you here? Now I want you to turn to your other neighbor, and I want you to ask them the question: why are you here? All right. Now, there's a reason I wanted you to ask them that question, because if we really want to be honest, if we really don't want to play any games, we come to this event every year for a variety of reasons. And if you want to be honest, there are people here who come out of a sense of obligation. If we want to be honest, there are people who are sitting in this room. Tonight is your black checkoff night. If we really want to be honest, there are some people sitting in this room who are here because your company bought the table. If we really want to be honest, there's some people who are here because your mom and your dad told you were coming. And the reason I'm saying that is because I travel all around the country and I speak to a variety of groups, and I'm always curious as to know why people are here. Why do they come to the annual Freedom Fund dinner? Do many of us even think for a second what it actually means to have a Freedom Fund dinner? Do we even break down those words, Freedom Fund dinner? Do we even understand what it means on the issue of freedom? Because see, we travel around this country and I hear folks talk about equality. I hear folks talk about tolerance. But it's amazing how little time we talk about freedom.
That's right.
See, when I love to hear folks, politicians, and others talk about Dr. King and talk about his speeches and talk about what he stood for. Because if you actually spent time and broke down numerous speeches, I don't mean the two y'all here all the time. I ain't, those of y'all who only get stuck on I Have a Dream and only the bottom part, not the top 2/3 part. Because the bottom part wasn't even in the original written text. That was extemporaneous. It wasn't even called I Have a Dream. It was called something else. No More, See No More. Or you listen to the mountaintop speech night before he died, not even realizing that was really a 46-minute and 15-second speech where he really gave a really true understanding of the blueprint moving forward. That was really how to maximize our economic power. If you even go back to the I Have a Dream speech on August 28th, 1963, he only mentioned equality once. He always talked about freedom. If you go back to all of his speeches and his writings, Dr. King talked about freedom. Whitney Young in the Urban League, you might have heard him talk about equality. You might have heard Roy Wilkins from the NAACP talk about equality. No, King understood freedom. Because what he was saying was, he wanted a situation where the moment somebody black was born, they had the exact same rights as somebody white. What he was saying is, I don't want something passed. I don't want something voted on every 25 years. I don't want something authorized. I don't want something required by the courts. Freedom means the moment you come into this earth, you have the exact same rights. That's freedom. We talk about freedom of speech. But many of us are scared to open our mouths. We talk about when we see wrongdoing and we begin to say, well, no, if I do this or do that, this might happen on my job. See, same thing happens on our jobs all the time. We got folks who I call parking lot militants. Stuff go wrong at your job and you suck it up. Wait till you get to the parking lot. Oh! All of a sudden, Farrakhan in the parking lot. You're scared to say something when you're in the building. It's interesting when I did the Monique show when I was at CNN, and she said, Earl, I'm scared because you say stuff on TV. I'm scared you might get fired. I said, Monique, let me help you out. I said, I start every job I've ever had with the premise, you're going to get fired anyway. I mean, if you really think about it, three things going to happen. You're going to stay there forever. You're going to leave. Or they're going to ask you to leave. It's only three options on a job. To me, there's nothing worse than seeing things on your job and you say nothing. And then what happens is you do all the right thing. You come on time. You get there early. You stay late. And you do, when you that perfect black person on the job, or white or Asian or whatever, you that perfect person, then you get laid off, now you mad as hell. Now you're at home cussing and fussing, man, I need all this sort of stuff, did everything right, I was a perfect employee, and then I got laid off anyway. Then you got me. Gave them hell, kicked they behind, so I get laid off, I'm good. Because I'm perfectly comfortable with what I did. And I know some folks can't think that way, but see, do understand, when you saw me on CNN for 6 years, I was giving more hell behind the camera than what you saw on TV. Because for me, it wasn't just about seeing a black face on the screen. I wanted black executives. I wanted black executive producers and black senior producers and black bookers and black live producers and black camera directors. That's what I wanted. Because I wasn't interested in the status quo. I wasn't interested in that because the reason I talked about Daniel Holtzclaw. See, when you don't have black folks in those positions, that's how they then don't cover our stories. All right. Because you can't have somebody who is an executive or executive producer or a senior producer or a show host and the story still get ignored. See, that's why I was willing to stand there and fight for somebody else, because I wanted to make sure that somebody who came after me was not going to be in the same position, because I just don't believe walking through a place and then you go through and there's no evidence that you were there. There's no evidence that you actually fought for something and it was there. That's why when I was at the White House Christmas party on Thursday night, and I saw several of our former CNN executives, and they looked at me, they were kind of weary. I'm like, yeah, I'm still black, and I'm still here. Because, see, when you understand who you are and why you are trying to fight for something, when you understand the concept of freedom, that changes your whole view. You look at things differently. You approach them differently. When you are about freedom, there is a fearlessness that is in your voice and in your attitude. When you're trying to be free, you're not trying to be content. When you're trying to be free, you're just not trying to coexist. When you're trying to be free, you're understanding that what happens today is not about you. It's really about your kids' kids. And so what happens is many of us right now are just sort of wading through this world, tap dancing, and then just hoping everything fall into place, or really hoping somebody else do all the heavy lifting, and then we get to sneak into the room and go, yay. See, I know I'm making some of y'all uncomfortable, but do understand something, okay? If y'all want to be comfortable, you could have called my wife, who's an ordained minister, and she could have prayed with you, and then y'all could have meditated and all that stuff. God gave her a spirit of comfort. God gave me a spirit of discomfort. My job is to make you uncomfortable, because at some point we've got to shake out of the doldrums and at some point realize that the suit might be cute, the dress might be nice, you might have all the wonderful jewelry on, but it don't mean a damn thing if you're walking around literally with shackles that are invisible and you still not free. And so if we're talking about how do we move forward in terms of the 21st century, you have to start at some point where you're saying, I am going to be a freedom fighter. See, it's amazing how we talk about the civil rights movement and we talk about folks, and we don't really spend time on those phrases. That was the reason they were called freedom singers. There was a reason they were called freedom fighters. Yeah. There's also a reason why some of us called it the civil rights movement and some of us called it the black freedom movement. See, you take those two phrases and they have two totally different meanings. See, civil rights movement ain't specific to black folks. That's a nice phrase that can apply to anybody. We see it now. We got all kind of folks saying they fighting for civil rights, fighting for civil rights, we got folks who fighting for civil rights and who want black folks to fight with them on their civil rights, but you don't see them on black rights.
Say that. Say that.
Well, let me be real clear. I mean, you got folks who are fighting for LGBT rights and want black folks there with them, but they don't exist when you're talking about black freedom.
Come on.
You got folks who are Latino, who are talking about walk with us, but we're saying, but where are you? So do understand, there was a pastor in Nebraska. There was some pro-lifers who came to him, and they said that they appreciated his position on the issue of being pro-life, and they said they wanted him to march with them in this major pro-life rally. He said, there's no problem. He said, but I also want y'all to roll with me in our community because we look at these crack houses in our neighborhoods, and we want to deal with them. They literally said, well, no, that's your problem.
My.
See, they saw the issue of abortion as being our problem, but they didn't see the issue of those very lives being destroyed by crack as being our problem too. Either you pro-life before they born and after you born, and it ain't just either or. See, again, I know that's making some folks uncomfortable because you're like, I can't believe he said that because we got some folk in the room who are gay and lesbian or Latino. But see, it don't matter because if you understand the issue of fighting for what's right, then it don't become a buffet.
All right.
See, when I go across this country and when I see the battle right now with affirmative action, when you saw the Supreme Court hearing oral arguments in the case of the University of Texas, and then you had a white female who was standing there talking about she couldn't get into the University of Texas because somebody black took her spot. No, you just wasn't good enough. Yeah. But the problem I have is when you have African Americans who are standing out there fighting for affirmative action, and I got white women who are too quiet, because if you actually go back and break down the history of affirmative action, started under President Richard Nixon, pushed by and developed by Arthur Fletcher, what you will realize is no group of people have benefited more from affirmative action in America than white women. Now, if you want to dispute that, come on. Because if you show me any city or county or state and federal, when they talk about federal dollars for contracts, what you will discover is they have a category, you have black, Hispanic, Asian, and women. If you ask the question, if you're a black woman, which category do you go in, they're going to tell you black. If you're a Hispanic woman, you go under Hispanic. If you're Asian, you go under Asian, which means the W really ain't for women. It should be WW, white women. If you go into most places, women have more of the contracts than anybody else, which means that's more white women than anybody else. I'm just telling you what's a fact. If you get mad, that's your problem. But I'm talking about the issue of freedom. I'm talking about being honest about what's going on. I'm talking about how we confront what is going on and how it is when we spend a significant amount of time expending our energy on somebody else's fights and somebody else's battles. But then we begin to say, where are you when we need you to show up?
Show up. That's it.
See, I got no problem with reciprocity. But this ain't going to be a one-way street. See, you can't have a situation if you're LGBT, but you quiet on black transgenders being killed.
Yeah.
You can't be an AIDS advocate, but you quiet when those black AIDS centers are not getting the resources they need when the face of AIDS right now in America is that of a black man or a black woman.
Yeah.
See, I've been covering these stories for a long time, and so it's interesting when people say, man, how you know? Because I'm like, don't think this is new. I'm talking about how do you fight for freedom?
Freedom.
Starting point is fighting for freedom. I talked about freedom singers and freedom fighters. Howard Zinn, in his book, The New Abolitionists, when he was talking about the SNCC workers, details this amazing story of these young SNCC folk. And if you don't know SNCC, hit the person next to you. Well, just go to Google, put in SNCC. Because one of the reasons you need to understand, because look, trust me, it's the folks right now trying to look all smart and cute, but you ain't got no idea what SNCC is, and you pulling your phone out, like all undercover, under the table going, SNCC. And you hoping you get a signal down here like, I got to Google what that means. But if you look at all the civil rights groups during the 60s, there was no greater group that drove advancement than SNCC, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. And so that was it. Howard Zinn tells this story of this young sister who was beaten viciously by cops, and many of these SNCC workers were thrown into some of the most shameful and decrepit prisons in America. And this sister was beaten. Her face was swollen, and her eyes were swollen. Her nose, all totally swollen. She couldn't even talk. And so she tried to speak, and they said, "We can't hear you, can't hear you." And somebody leaned closer, and they literally put their ear on her lips, and she said, "Freedom." She couldn't say anything else, but she said, "Freedom." Because she understood what it is she got her behind kicked for, because she said, "I'm willing to die for freedom. I'm willing to put my life on the line for freedom." And when you begin to listen to those folks who were freedom singers, and there was those songs that got them through. When you heard somebody say, "I ain't gonna let nobody turn me around." When you heard them say, "I woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom." There's a consistent theme here, because every day all they were thinking about was freedom. So you could ask yourself the question in 2015, heading into 2016, what do you wake up every day thinking about? Do you wake up every day thinking about 401k? Do you wake up every day thinking about trying to find me a man? Trying to find me a woman? Do you wake up every day thinking about, can I keep this house? Because when you begin to examine freedom and begin to realize that between 2007 and present day, black folks lost 53% of the wealth that we accumulated because of the home foreclosure crisis, that is directly tied to our economic freedom. When it would take 2 generations to recoup that money, that's economic freedom. And when we begin to look at what is happening right now, according to the Brandeis study, where the average white family in America has $110,000 in wealth, and the average African-American family has $5,000, that tells you the focus on economic freedom is bleak for us. So when we talk about freedom, we should be thinking about every day, what is our economic freedom? See, there's a reason I wasn't sitting here just throwing it out there saying house paid, cars paid, no credit card, because when I say that debt is an invisible shackle, when you have black kids who are coming out of college with an average of $30,000 in student loan debt, white kids coming out with an average of $11,000 in student loan debt, you got to go back to the $110,000 average white family, $5,000 black, because when that kid gets ready to get married, then that white parent's able to say, "Here's your home down payment." And when that black kid gets married, they can say, "Baby, here's your gift card."
Mama.
And then all of a sudden, then when that black man or that black woman begins to have kids, and they can't be able to accumulate wealth because they are being denied opportunities, and all of a sudden their white counterpart, they're able to save money for their kid, and the cycle continues and continues, and then we're left, we're still trying to figure out what in the world is going on. We're talking about freedom. But we also got to be honest in terms of our own history, because so many of us, again, we're so smart, we're so cute, and we want to be so far away from the reality of the black freedom movement or even slavery. But you got to put this in context. 1619, the first slave touched down in America. This is 2015. That's 396 years. If you use 1970 as the marker when we were so-called free. Now, we all know that's a lie. Well, Civil Rights Act 64, Voting Rights Act of 65, Fair Housing Act of 68, yet other laws as well. But if you use 1970 just as a basic marker for black folks being free, that means that in the history of America, we have only been so-called free for 45 years. Raise your hand if you are 46 and older. And why some of y'all tripping because you don't want to reveal your damn age? Your knees are cracking. Your hair's lost. You got wrinkles. But you try to act like you